What is the longest internal flight? And by that I mean an aeroplane flight from one part of a country to another part of that same country. For instance, an internal flight might be from London to Edinburgh or New York to Las Vegas. But which one is the longest? Let's start with America, which is a large country if you're measuring it from east to west. Going from Boston to Los Angeles, which is basically the width of the USA, the distance is 4,169 kilometers or 2,591 miles. This is a good starting point, but Hawaii is also an American territory and around 2,500 more miles on top of that. So from Boston to Honolulu, that brings the flight distance up to a total of 5,095 miles or 8,200 kilometers. This is the longest US internal flight which operates commercially and regularly. However, can other countries do better? Moving on to Russia, the largest country in the world, I'd expect them to have a good chance at this. From Moscow to Vladivostok, it is 6,423 kilometers or 3,991 miles. That is a fair bit less from Boston to Hawaii, but Moscow isn't the furthest city away from Vladivostok, so let's take St. Petersburg. This city is a bit further west, but a lot further north, which should make some difference at least. Well, not really, no. From St. Petersburg to Vladivostok, it is 6,553 kilometers or 4,072 miles, just a little bit more than Moscow to Vladivostok at 3,991 miles, or 6,423 kilometers. After looking at these flight distances, I think we can safely say that Russia is not going to beat Boston to Hawaii flight, so we should move on to another country. But what about Britain? They own quite a lot of overseas territories even today. Well, there is one route operated by the Ministry of Defence which passengers can book seats on. This goes from RAF base Bruce Norton down to Ascension Island, which is 4,182 miles or 6,730 kilometres. However, this is just a refuelling stop and goes a further 3,914 miles or 6,298 kilometres to the Falkland Islands. While this isn't a commercial flight, passengers can fly on this route, and it does sort of count, but what do you think? Leave a comment telling me your opinion on it. Finally, on to France. There are a few flights from Paris to some of the French-owned Caribbean islands. Most of these are just over 4,000 miles, but there is another flight from Paris to Réunion Island, a French territory on the coast of Madagascar, which is 5,809 miles or 9,349 kilometres. This flight is regular and over 700 miles longer than the Boston to Honolulu flight, so surely we found the longest internal flight then? Well, maybe not, depending on how you define an internal flight. It's all down to something called the Schengen Zone, which are a group of countries, all EU members, where passport checks between those countries are not needed to ease logistics, transportation and tourism. The Schengen Zone is basically a subsection of the EU, allowing more free movement of people. Boring bureaucracy explained, how does this affect the seemingly unrelated question of what is the longest internal flight? Mainland France, this is in the Schengen area, but Réunion Island, this is not. So Réunion not being in the Schengen Zone means that passport checks at both ends have to happen, and that sounds a bit more like a normal flight. Surely an internal flight means no passport checks. Once again, I'll let you guys decide in the comments. But there is one more thing. Recently, well, sort of recently, on the 12th of May 2020, a French B plane got the longest flight between two airports owned by the same country at a distance of 16,129 kilometres, or just over 10,000 miles. This flight lasted almost 17 hours and was flown on a non-stop route. However, this service does not operate regularly, and it is unclear at the moment how many passengers, if any, were on the plane at the time. So, since there is just not very much information about this flight and the details of it, I'm going to disqualify it since it was just a one-off publicity stunt for a small airline and it had few or no passengers. Also, it's not a regular flight, this was just a one-off. Even without this flight though, it is still unclear who the record goes to, so you can choose which one you think fits the criteria best. Anyway, thank you for making it to the end of the video, and I hope you did enjoy it. If this video gets 10 likes, I might do a second part to this World's Shortest Flights video. But for now though, goodbye, and I'll be back next Saturday with another video.